So it's the dawn of a new year, and I'd like to share some thoughts. This isn't going to be one of those "you're a piece of shit. You should have started your New Year's resolutions now." Blah 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 blah. Psychological beatdown because I'm better than you and you're a piece of shit. So on and so forth. That's not true. One and two. There's so many of those things on the internet already. You can go watch some of those. I'm sure someone will do it better than I can. I think that there's an important balance between tough love and compassion that people really miss out on. And that's why the message gets missed. So I'm going to try to marry those two things together and say something in a way that might impact your year or it might not. And you might just close the window before I get finished. And that's okay too. So there's a couple of things I think that are worth looking at when it comes to New Year's. And I made a post in my private group the other day, which triggered a few people, which I found hilarious. And I said, show me someone who thinks that New Year's resolutions are a waste of time, and I'll show you someone who can't keep promises to themselves or achieve their long term goals. I stand by that. Now, you don't have to make your annual goals at the start of the calendar year. You don't even have to have annual goals. You can have quarterly goals, 6 monthly goals, decade goals. I couldn't give a fuck. But I think that I don't want to use the word ritual, but the process of setting goals at the start of every calendar year has meaning, and it always has to me. So I'm just going to share what works for me, and maybe it'll work for you. One thing I like to do every year is look back at where I was the year before. And I also use my birthday as a barometer for this because my birthday is in September. So it's kind of like I'm 3/4 of the way through the year. I should have got my shit together by now. And I like to look back at where I was last New Year's and where I was the New Year's before. And the most important part of that is not drinking until you're annihilated so you can actually fucking remember what you did. Key point. And I like to look back at that and go, have I evolved? Have I progressed? Am I proud of the progress that I have made over the course of a year? Have I progressed enough in this last year that I'm actually proud of myself? And if not, why not? And I've been fortunate enough, not fortunate because it didn't have anything to do with luck. I've had the foresight enough that I have kept myself on track with these goals and kept promises to myself that every year New Year's is exciting for me because I sit back and look back at the year of what I've accomplished and I'm proud of myself. And one thing that I talk about a lot in my lectures, in the War and Masculinity lectures, is the importance of being proud of yourself. I think that that is fundamentally crucial for mental health. But what is also important is that life doesn't inherently have participation trophies. And you actually genuinely have to be proud of yourself to be proud of yourself. You can't trick yourself with that shit because you'll know full well that you're just lying to yourself. And plenty of people do that by altering their neurochemistry with psychiatric drugs to tell them that they're doing better than they are, or giving them artificial discipline and artificial motivation to get themselves off the couch to do the shit that they should have been able to do without the drugs. So I'm not using this as a platform to gloat. I'm using this as a platform to give two pieces of advice. One is that if you're in a situation like that, where you are proud of what you've accomplished this year, then I think that you should keep that momentum up and see what you can do next year. I think one of the best things you can do is set annual goals and then see if you can achieve it in 6 months. And I think a lot of the time you can. I think a lot of the time we give ourselves far too long to achieve goals. And I think that what we set in 12 months, we could get done in 6. And then that gives you double the amount of time to get further down the line of where you want to go. But I think there's probably a equal amount of people, or maybe more, depending on the cohort of who's listening to this, who maybe didn't have a good year and maybe are a little bit further behind the eight ball than they'd like to be. Or maybe something happened, maybe life dealt you something this year that you weren't ready for. Maybe you had a cataclysmic event that threw you off the path, or maybe you just regressed into old habits and fell off the wagon. And I think that all of those are okay. Not okay in terms of making excuses for, well, falling off the wagon and being a fuck up or having a victim mentality around where you're at. But I think it's okay to recognize that this is where you're at. And it's about making the best move on the board to get from where you are now to where you want to be. And for the people who are listless and for the people who are unsure of what to do this year, saying, what's my purpose? What can I do? I'm just kind of mulling around doing the same shit day in, day out. The year's gone by like that. I'm still the same person I was last year. I've still got the same loser friends. I'm still doing the same loser degenerative shit every weekend. And I'm not really proud of myself. I'm not really proud of what I've achieved. I think one of the best things that you can do, and I've said this before, is have a look and go, what do I wish I did last year? And what do I wish I actually stuck to last year? And just do that this year. And I think it's really that simple. I think the biggest area that people fuck up, and I focused on this in the War on Masculinity Part 2, is doing shit that you know you shouldn't be doing and not doing the stuff that you know that you should be doing. And I think making a commitment to cut that out and pull your finger out and just do the right thing, it's often that simple. And for a lot of people, sorry, my nose is running, I'm still a bit congested. For a lot of people, they don't know what the right things are. And that's where you need to learn. But I think that that is few and far between compared to the people who know they shouldn't be binge drinking. They know they should be getting up when their alarm goes off and not hitting snooze. They know they should be doing some mobility work every day. They know they should be practicing some mindfulness. They know that they should be less of a cunt to the people around them. That's a big one. And all in all, I think people should be focusing on making the world a better place for themselves and the people around them. Because if you don't know what the meaning of life is, and I don't know what the meaning of life is, I think that that's a good place to start. I think that's a good place to tread water while you work that out. So, actionables. Actionables are important. Esoteric shit doesn't really mean anything if you can't do anything about it. So, actionables. So, if you've never meditated before and don't have the skill of mindfulness, if you're not able to, in a circumstance, exert the willpower of what you want to do and you just float in the wind like a leaf of life and then bitch about where that wind takes you, the first thing you need to do is learn to control your mind. And this can have all kinds of cool, trendy sounding shit labeled on it. At the end of the day, it's mindfulness. It's the skill of mindfulness. It's the mental skill of attention. And the way that you get this skill is that you practice meditation. Just like if you want to get strong, you go to the gym and lift weights. And yes, you can get strong doing other things. But for this analogy, there's also other ways you can develop mindfulness. But one of the most effective ways and one of the most powerful ways to do it is through the practice of meditation. And the practice of meditation, and you can look up my lecture on TRT and mindfulness if you want to see a full in-depth lesson on how to do that, is you download an app that teaches you how to do it. I like Headspace. You can download whatever app you want. There's no affiliate link in the fucking bio. And you sit down and you shut up and you learn how to focus your thoughts on nothing. And then what happens is your thoughts drift away. You get distracted. Maybe you go, oh, I nailed it. And then you start thinking and celebrating about that, or you start thinking about what you're anxious about or what you're dreading or what you fucked up before, and who knows. And then you go, oh shit, my mind wandered off. I'm coming back to the present moment. And that's a rep. And that process is very important because you're learning to break your default mode network of getting caught up in the monkey mind and focus on the here and now and what you want to do. And that's a really important skill to have because that is the antidote to losing your temper. That is the antidote to reacting emotionally in situations that are volatile. But most importantly, that is the antidote for doing what you need to do, not what you want to do. And if I look back over the course of the years of when I maybe wasn't doing as well as I am now, and I'm a work in progress, just like you are, I spent a lot more time doing the things I wanted to do in the short term, which didn't benefit me in the long term. And what was a difficult thing for me to grasp, and I think this is one of the most important things to view as the observer of your life, rather than the ego mind, but as the observer, as the sentient being that is in charge of you and is in charge of your brain and you can pull rank, is sitting down and understanding this. Is that if you stay where you are now, life is not going to be the same degree of difficulty. It is going to get harder because as you get older, you're going to wear and tear. But as a man, you're also going to be expected to have more responsibility and more mastery as you get older. So if you stay where you're at now and you keep your current skill level where it is, the game of life is going to get harder. So you're going to stay level, whatever level you are, but the challenge of the enemies and the challenge of the terrain of life is going to get more difficult. So subjectively, your life is going to get more difficult. So, and that's if you just stay the same and don't do any degenerative shit that's actually going to wear you out faster than it should. So your options are you either fall off the wagon and fuck up like a moron, you stay where you're at, and life still linearly or exponentially, depending on what happens, gets slightly harder over time, and therefore your life gets worse. Or you start practicing the self-development shit that you should have done a while ago, and you do it in a way that outpaces the gradient of life getting harder. The approach is that simple, but it's not that easy to do that, because what that requires is daily consistent action of doing the right thing. And a lot of the time, doing the right thing involves this. And it's a very simple process, but you have to be aware of it and you have to tune into it to understand what's going on. Is you have to sit there and go, okay, what I need to do is difficult. It might involve me getting up early in the cold. It might involve me going to the gym after a hard day of work. It might involve me sitting down and doing my meditation practice. It might involve me doing some, I don't care what it is, but it's something that's harder than sitting on your phone and scrolling through Instagram or whatever you do to waste time. And going, okay, so there's a gap between the comfort I'm experiencing here and the discomfort of what I don't want to do. But what you need to objectively understand as the observer, as the person who can pull rank and can exert authority over your actions in the moment, is that what's going to be more difficult in the long term, as opposed to this amount of difficulty, is the inaction and the consequence of not doing the work that you need to do. And that's the part that I think people really mess up with in the moment, but then they get kicked in the ass by hindsight being 2020 and they feel guilty and their self-esteem goes to shit. Because I think we know that getting up when the alarm goes off, it's not that hard. Going to the gym a couple of extra times a week, it's not that hard. Not eating the junk food, it's not that hard. It makes you feel shit after you eat it anyway. You know that because you've done it enough times. But I think what you need to understand and what you need to really drill in this moment is understanding that the difficulty of what you need to do is acute, but being the person who did the hard thing that you didn't want to do will probably offset that difficulty. The degree of pride that you have for doing what you didn't want to do in that moment and consistently being the guy who did the stuff that you didn't want to do because you knew that it was the right thing and you knew that it would benefit you in the long term, and then getting to be that person at the end of it, that massively outweighs that short-term discomfort. But what you need to understand is that complacency has more discomfort dealt to you chronically over time. So you're going to net more pain and discomfort if you don't do the shit that you know that you need to do. And I think the best time to start this is the first of the month. So make it a New Year's resolution, but actually stick to it. Because everyone who I've met who thinks that New Year's resolution is bullshit are the people who think that human beings don't have any free will and they don't know how to set goals. They don't know how to keep promises to themselves, yet they're happy to play the victim and whinge about the circumstances that they have ultimately dealt themselves. You may have had a shittier hand dealt to you this year or in the past than other people. But what I can assure you, as someone who has coached thousands of men over the last few years, is there are people who have had way shittier hands than you dealt, and they're doing way better. Life is difficult. And I think one of the biggest difficulties that we have as young adults, 25 to 40, depending on how optimistic you want to be about what young means, is that life is harder than we thought it would be when we were a teenager. And that responsibilities and burden of performance and all of the curveballs that life throws at you, plus the uncertainty of where the world's heading and inflation and all these different things, it's all difficult. It is. And some of us have it more difficult than others. But it doesn't mean that you can't respond accordingly. It doesn't mean that you can't take time to be grateful for what you have. And it doesn't mean that you can't sit back and strategically look at the chessboard and make the best move you can, because what else are you going to do? That's it. Have a good year.